The biggest value, I think, is the foundational piece that people feel are trusted, right? So when you have inclusion, you create spaces of trust, you create spaces of psychological safety, and that, build upon that, the next rung of the ladder, you create spaces of productivity and engagement that drives innovation, right? So it's kind of like this absolute ripple effect, but it starts with trust.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Leading with Integrity. And today we'll be tackling one of the bigger workplace questions, let's call it, not an issue. It's something that's made headlines over the last year or so, in particular in a certain part of the world, and not for very nice reasons, but is nevertheless an important question, an important issue that I think leaders need to be dealing with, need to be addressing, need to be thinking about. And the question I'm talking about is the one of diversity and inclusion. So to talk with me about this today, I'm joined by my guest, Delphia Howze, who is an award-winning, forward-thinking HR leader, an inclusion strategist, and CEO of her own company, as well as having over 2 decades of leadership experience and recently authoring a book, which we'll be hearing about as well. But Delphia is all about innovative strategies that drive inclusive workplaces where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. So we will be talking about diversity, inclusion, leadership, workplace culture, as well as questions like vulnerability, psychological safety, empowerment, and community. Hard to think of someone better placed for this conversation. That's enough from me. Cue the intro music, and then we'll be getting Delphia on the show.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Well, welcome to Leading with Integrity. It is lovely to have you on the show. Looking forward to this conversation. I know it's going to be an interesting one, and there's some important issues that we're going to cover today as well. So yeah, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation as well.
Great. Well, over to you, really, to start us off. Tell us a bit about yourself, your career so far, what you do today, why you do it, all of those type of questions.
Sure. So Delphia Howze, I am the author of a wonderful new book titled Including You, Leading Inclusion from Where You Are. It was released at the end of 2024. And I got into this space to focus on inclusion, bringing people together from all walks of life more than 20 years ago. So my background is in human resources, and I've had the wonderful benefit of working in several different industries. I started my career in the banking industry as a bank officer and recognized that there's an opportunity there to really focus on how do we bring out the best in people and ultimately ensure that the organization was at its best through its people. And so that's where my work of inclusion started. And again, it's been more than 20 years that I've done this. I love finding spaces where there's connectivity, that we can recognize the value of one another, and that we are minimizing or eliminating potential for exclusion of anyone, right? That's not something that we want in any environment, whether it's work or personal. We as humans want to be connected and included with one another. So, that's what I do.
Short and to the point. Thank you. I mean, you're welcome to go on for 10 minutes if you like, but anyway, tell us more about the book. That'd be the best thing, I think, because it's an important subject. I'd love to know, what prompted you to write it as well, and why.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes. So the book is, something that is very valuable to me, and I think it's valuable to others. Again, the title is very specific, Including You, Leading Inclusion from Where You Are. And that title I selected simply because I've been doing this work for more than 20 years and had the opportunity to hear and see different experiences from different perspectives, from people of different backgrounds, different socioeconomic levels, different races, ethnicities, genders, age, generational differences, all of those differences, but also realizing the commonality and the similarity with regard to that because we're human, right? Human-centric integrity is a reality for us. And so having the opportunity to really draw on those real life experiences that I've had and seen and witnessed and been a part of and put them into this book in a way that helps us to recognize that inclusion brings about the best in us. Inclusion is something that's not difficult for us to do. And inclusion is everyone's responsibility, right? We all have the power and the ability and the desire to create that type of environment. Every person knows what it's felt like to be excluded, right? So David, if we think back to, kindergarten, high school, middle school, whatever the case, there probably was a certain time when we didn't feel included in a particular environment. And, I'm guessing that it probably didn't feel good. And when it did not, when we experience that type of exclusion or any type of exclusion, we're not at our best. We can't, we can't produce our best. We can't be our best selves because we begin to, there's a lot of things that go on in our brain where we begin to self-reflect. We begin to question. We begin to doubt ourselves in that environment. And that's not what we want in our workplaces. We want people to feel included and valued and recognized for what they bring to the table. And we want them to know that. So instead of waiting for the CEO, the leaders of the organizations, human resources to set the standard of what inclusion looks like, I submit to you and everyone else that we all have a personal responsibility and we can lead the charge in creating more inclusive environments. This book is definitely something that helps us to see that, and recognize the potential that we can carry to catalyze that more inclusive environment. And I'm not speaking of just one specific demographic group. I'm talking about inclusion for all.
It's an important issue. And I think I see a parallel there as well to leadership itself, I think, in terms of it being everyone's responsibility. Because I think a lot of these like hot topics, important things, big issues, or whatever you want to call them, I think it's quite easy, isn't it, for us as a whole population in an organisation or a country or whatever else to just kind of, well, that's the leadership's problem. That's that's the boss's job. But actually, if we want it to work across that entire entity, everyone has to take part in it. And I think it's true for leadership. It's true for inclusion, for diversity. It's true as well for other things like security, administration, even. If you want it to work at a big scale, you have to get everyone bought into it and involved in it. Anyway, yeah, I'm trying not to get on the soapbox.
No. I'm with you there. It's easy to point the finger to the other direction, right?
Yeah.
But what can we do as individuals to help facilitate that? A lot of leaders and CEOs, et cetera, they're not, they're in the positions that they are for their skills, their abilities, et cetera, right? We forget about the soft skill of just connecting with people. And I think that it's a natural need for us as humans. And how do we bring that out to be the best?
Yeah, and the irony there as well is that it's that softer skill, the relationship building, is probably what's got them into that position in the first place. And then suddenly don't need to do that anymore. It's weird that. Don't get it.
Yeah. We as humans are odd people or odd creatures,
Absolutely.
So yeah, but I think that, if you have the opportunity to remind individuals of that, it kind of begins to resonate and become a reality for them. I can tell you that I've had a number of individuals just say, you know what, thank you for saying it. Thank you for elevating the opportunity for me to be mindful of my responsibility and the opportunities that are ahead. We go along in our day-to-day lives doing what we need to do. And, sometimes we just need to take a step back and get back to the basics, right? Think about back in kindergarten, right? We were taught not to kick, punch, steal, bite, not to call people names, not to, do all kinds of bad things, right? If we were all kindergartners, we would have a much more inclusive environment.
Definitely. I mean, leadership, again, I think is quite a good example of this, about the meaning we give to words, and how the different understandings of different people, different backgrounds for the same concept can sometimes lead us astray. I think what I was saying there about leadership and how anyone can do it, I think that's one of those examples. Another big one has to be the three words, doesn't it? Like diversity, equity, and inclusion. Obviously, that's becoming a bit of a political issue right now and in recent months. But at a workplace level, how do you define those terms? And then once we've got a common definition, then we can move on to talking about what they mean and why they matter.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's important to separate the words, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've lumped them all together into one big box. And that overlaid with the fact that we've not defined them completely or, consistently, in terms of what they mean. So if you think about the word diversity in and of itself, right, separated from all of the other letters of the acronym, right? Diversity means that you have more than one element in any given environment. Dr. Roosevelt Thomas, who's no longer here with us, spoke about that more than 2 decades ago, right? And left us with a definition, of a very concise definition. And he says that diversity is about the mixture of elements in any given environment at any given time. Now I'm paraphrasing, but that's generally what he says. So if you have more than one element in the room, right? There's likely to be something that's different there, right? And that's okay, right? You think about a rose garden, or even, just a garden in general, right? You have so many different species of plants in the environment. And the reality is no rose is the same. Every rose has a different, thorn structure, whatever the case may be, right? Still a rose, but there's differences there. And so, and again, back to the point of the similarity. So recognizing that. And so when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about one demographic group. We're not just talking about women. We're not just talking about men. We're not just talking about people of color. We're talking about diversity, meaning, bringing all of those elements together in one environment. It's as simple as that. Now, when you transition to the other letters of the acronym, right? With regard to inclusion speaks to the opportunity to look at those elements, and how do we create an environment where the value of each of those elements is brought to the top, or recognized, and identified, and again, valued. That is going to help to ensure that whatever elements of diversity are in the environment are comfortable, are welcomed, are willing to stay, are willing to, willing and able to be as productive as they possibly can be, right? Now, the interesting thing about both of those words is if we don't define them, we leave definition and understanding to everyone's own experience and comfort level. So if we were to line 10 people up and ask each and every one of them, what does diversity mean to them? What does inclusion mean to them independently? We will get 10 different answers. And are they wrong? Absolutely not. They're from their individual perspectives. But in the workplace, there is value and great opportunity and benefit to making sure that if we're using those words in the workplace, that we're absolutely clear and concise in terms of what we mean for the organization, and that every person understands that. Every person understands it from that perspective. And so there's a chapter in my book, Words Matter, right? Words are so very important. And not only are the words important, but the definition of those words are important as well. So again, I love to refer back to the thought process of children, right? When we were teaching children and when we were being taught as children, things were explained to us in very basic terms and defined for us so that we can understand what they mean. Fire means hot. It means this. It means hurt if you put your hand on it, all of those things we learned, right? But as we get older, we don't take time to define things as clearly and concisely because we make assumptions that people should know what it means. means. And we also make assumptions that our perspectives are always right, which they're not.
That's a very good point. Yeah. I mean, not to play devil's advocate, but I mean, taking that example of fire, right? Danger, hurt, hot, also life saving. Like without fire, like we wouldn't be here as a species anymore, would we? So, yeah, I think maybe that's a commentary more on the education system than anything else. But anyway, I think what always strikes me about this conversation and where people get so like het up and angsty about it is how arbitrary the definitions are when it comes to like this group of people or that group of people or that background or like so, and some things which are seen as like socially acceptable to discriminate on. So say education, for example, degree versus not degree educated, that in the workplace is apparently that's fine. We can use that as justification to hire someone or not. And I don't know where that comes from, because actually in the vast majority of jobs and workplaces, whether you're degree educated or not makes no difference. Like in my experience anyway, unless you're a lawyer or a doctor or something like that, it's totally irrelevant. So why is that fine? Anyway, yeah, I'm trying not to go on a rant.
No, I hear you. I hear you. It's very complex. It's so very complex. And I know there's obviously a ton of research out there that, tries to answer the questions, but again, have we answered it concisely? Right. I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think there is, an opportunity for, a shift in focus, and that shift in focus, I believe, needs to be strategic, right, and not emotional. We have operated, through a lot of things in our world, not just one society over another, in our world, and there's a lot of emotional baggage that we all harbor and that we're carrying and moving forward with. And sometimes we forget that one piece that I said earlier. We're all human, right? We're all human. We all have the opportunity to recognize the value of human-centric integrity.
Absolutely, and that's the point I think that makes the fact that it's even an argument just absurd to me, because we all have that one commonality: we're all human. But at the same time, every single individual is different. So, and it's back to that arbitrary definitions again, and like who decides where the lines are, and yeah, and it's a bit, I don't know, it's mad, it's absurd. That's the word, isn't it? But
I love that it's absurd. I agree with you, because I think we get in our own way. We get in our own way, and when you think about it, it really isn't that difficult. It just isn't. It's not that difficult if we want to be a little more civil and have greater opportunities for stronger civility and respect for one another, right? I have a brother and a sister. I'm the oldest, so they have to listen to me, right? But, they have their very own, we come from the same house, same parents, etc. And we all live our lives very, very differently. We obviously have great similarities, we look alike, all of those things. But, we respect one another for differences that they bring to the table. May not agree with all of them, but we respect them. And in any type of environment where we are, we always make sure that there's not any point of, one person being ostracized, excluded, disrespected, any of those things. And that's just in one family, right? So we need to spread that out a little further.
Definitely. And I mean, at a business level or workplace as well. I mean, for life too, like, I struggle to understand it. Like the people who want like everyone to look the same, sound the same, have the same backgrounds, or else their workplace isn't going to work, and that's somehow bad to have diversity. Like, what a boring way to run a business and exist. Like, if everything's the same, would you have the same thing for lunch every single day with no variation? No, of course you wouldn't, because you'd probably lose the will to live after a week, wouldn't you? So why is that any different? Yeah. Anyway, I'm trying not to trivialize it with a
No,
bad
you're
example,
absolutely
but
right. I agree with you. I think I mean, as much as I like myself, I would be bored with myself if I had to live with,
right.
myself all day, every day, right? So I think that, it just, and here's the thing, I have a thought process or, something that I say very frequently, and inclusion begins with I and always needs you. I can't see the world completely if I don't understand it from a different perspective as well, right? So, you think of how we spell that word. It starts from us looking at ourselves and understanding who we are, but also reaching out and making sure that we're creating spaces and bridges for connectivity with you, with others, with that, so that we can see the world fully.
I like that. Yeah. It's easy to remember as well, which suits me. Great, yeah. I think we've probably been talking already about the value of inclusion in the workplace. I think given that inclusion is kind of your area of specialism, we should focus on that. I kind of have two questions. I mean, firstly, from your point of view, what do you think is the biggest value of it to a workplace, to a business?
Yeah,
I'll
the
come back to the
biggest,
second one.
no, I think that's a great question. The biggest value, I think, is the foundational piece that people feel, the foundational understanding and reality that people feel are trusted, right? So when you have inclusion, you create spaces of trust, you create spaces of psychological safety, and that build upon that, the next rung of the ladder, you create spaces of productivity and engagement that drives innovation, right? So it's kind of like this absolute ripple effect, but it starts with trust. And when you have trusting environments, you're willing to give of yourself, you're willing to accept different perspectives, you're willing to engage fully. But absent of that, right, you miss all of those wonderful ripples in the pond to that ultimately lead to productivity and innovation. So I think that that's there's many benefits, but I think from my perspective and what I've seen and experienced, those are the foundational elements, benefits, greatest benefits.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to particularly like the creativity, the innovation, the productivity aspect of it. To me, the reason why it's always made sense is it's in that, like, I mean, the clue is in the word, isn't it? The diversity, but that also leads to diversity of thought. When you have people from different backgrounds, understanding levels of knowledge, you have different perspectives. It's hard to imagine any decision in a business setting that won't benefit from that level of diverse thought. And that's always been like the easy sell for me. Like I've never understood why more people don't see it that way when it comes to that sort of issue. But yeah, anyway. So my second follow-up question, which might be more difficult, I don't know. But so in the 20 years you've been doing this and been involved in this sort of work, are there trends in the workplace that you've seen? Do you think things are getting better without straying into the political side of it, if we can?
Yeah.
But, no worries if we have to. It's all good.
Yeah, let's not say the P word, right? So I think that, I do. I really think that things are getting better, right? We've come a long way. We've experienced a lot of different things in workplaces. And I think the realization that we're stronger together than apart is a reality. Even the the individual who is the most introverted and doesn't want to connect with individuals, research shows that, there's still a desire to connect with others. So I do think that it's getting better in the sense that people recognize the value as a reality and not just this abstract thing. Oh yeah, we should do it. No, there's benefit and we have research and we've shared it. So I do believe that it's getting better. Now, let me clarify that. I think conceptually it's getting better in terms of action and behavior. That's a different story, right? Have workplaces created the safe space for people to act upon, creating more inclusive environments in a way that's meaningful? I don't know that, there's been a strategic approach to that across the board. Some places have done that and have done it well. But I guess the question is, how do we make sure that that is done consistently and again, strategically and not led with emotion?
Yeah, there's the real trick though, isn't it? Because as we know, humans are emotional creatures. So, so I mean, what is the answer to that question? Do you have one? Is there one?
Ooh. So, I think that it's a hard shift. It is, to your point, humans are emotional. That's just the reality. Um, but I think that we have to manage our emotional intelligence. We have to harness that and build that in a way that allows us to still be human, but also recognize that there's value in being strategic. It's sometimes a hard balance. It's not always easy, but the more that we do it, the easier it becomes.
One perspective that I've always found particularly difficult to overcome when people have it is the assumption that for another demographic, whichever one it might be, to succeed or to win this job means that mine won't. And that kind of that either or narrative, which can be like, I mean, it's really toxic in the first place, isn't it? I mean, it's borderline immoral and illegal, isn't it? But let's gloss over that bit for now. But I mean, how can you break people out of that and get it towards more of this cooperative narrative and get them to understand that actually both benefit? It's not either or.
When we recognize the true value of others. So let me take a step back and say, I think that a lot of the work starts with our own understanding of ourselves, right? If we are comfortable in the skin that we're in and the humans that we are, it's easier for us to be accepting of others for who they are, right? And recognize that that difference brings value. The difference that the individual brings value to our world. And so I think that's the very first step in helping us to get there is shining the flashlight on ourselves first, right? And recognizing that we are imperfect. We are created to be imperfect. There is not one perfect individual on the face of this earth. There just isn't. We may think that we are, but we're just not. And so, getting comfortable with that reality helps us to see others, and their imperfections in a way that is not punitive.
No, I think perfection might be rapidly rising up the list of my most hated words, especially in a work context. It's the root of so many issues and misunderstandings and problems and just unnecessary workplace stress as well, even just at like a task level.
Yes, I don't disagree. Yeah, when we operate from a space of perfection, oh my gosh, that's when blinders are on, right? Perfection causes us to have to put blinders on. And when you have blinders on, think of all the things we're missing.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to think of like the areas where I've seen it do the most damage. I think that there's probably two, aren't there? Maybe three. Obviously, it's in the inclusion space, but also hiring. Like, how many managers have you ever seen? Like, oh, well, this one technically they're pretty good on paper, but I'm holding out for that perfect candidate until I find them. I'm not hiring anyone. That old chestnut. And then obviously, like every project anyone's ever worked on, like we have to wait until this is perfect before we release the product or whatever.
And then it never gets released.
Yeah, and it kills companies, doesn't it? It's yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We have to, recognize that it's okay to be perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
It is perfect.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
It's okay to be perfectly imperfect, and you know, again, not comfortable for a lot of people, but I love that you mentioned stress, right? That that's a breeding ground for stress, and we know what stress does for us as humans, if it's not managed well. Um, who wants that? Who wants that?
Yeah. I mean, the number of people who've had burnout because they were spending all these hours of every day just in this relentless pursuit of the impossible perfection. Like, yeah, I had an old manager who used to quote the 80-20 rule a lot. And like the perfect being the enemy of the good and that whole rationale. And that's really stuck with me, even though he personally was really bad at living by that. The concept has always stuck in my head ever since. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think that's a great opportunity to just, open eyes, right? So there's another one, progress over perfection, progress over perfection. Are we moving forward? Are we, driving in a positive, productive, lane, so to speak, versus, stuck on perfection that, like you said, can be debilitating, paralyzing, and all of those things.
Yeah. And ultimately it's unachievable. So
right, exactly.
like,
Because
yeah.
what's the definition? How do you know that you've reached perfection?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the context changes that sometimes, doesn't it? But
Absolutely.
yeah,
And then as soon as we say, oh yeah, this is perfect, because we're striving for perfection, it no longer is perfect because there's something beyond that. So yeah, it's very, very subjective sometimes.
definitely. And there'll always be something else that could be added to whatever it is. Like the customer's perspective as well. They may not see it the way you see it. And yeah, it's a minefield, definitely.
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt.
So I think we're starting to touch on the subject of the next question now. A lot of these things feed into the culture of an organization, but how do you see practices around diversity and inclusion feeding into the culture of, let's say, a company?
Mm. So I think that again, you can't have an organization without some elements of diversity, right? If you have an organization, unless it's completely robotic, right? You have people. So you have diversity. It may not be parity in terms of, we have 50-50 split of whatever demographic, right? Or any demographic. But again, if you have more than one person in the room, there are elements of diversity there. The inclusion piece is, let's just talk about those two individuals. They could be twins, even. They could be twins, and they're still going to be, diverse. They're still going to have elements of differences and similarities, right? Twins, right? Identical twins. And so think about the inclusion piece. So how do we make sure that each one of those twins, each one of those individuals can be their best selves, can do their best work, right? One individual may, let's just introversion, extroversion, may be an introvert and need to process the world very differently from their counterpart or their twin. We're talking about twins, their twin, in a way that allows them to be successful and productive. Inclusion speaks to the fact that we've created an environment where people can bring their best selves and contribute to the success of the environment, personally and professionally. So how can we take those two individuals who are identical twins and bring out the best of them for the betterment of the organization? So I think that's how they work hand in hand. And again, just recognizing that diversity is more than a demographic group.
And I mean, there's so many elements to demographics as well anyway. Like, there's the classic ones that everyone talks about a lot, like race and gender and sexuality, but there's other things as well, like economic background, education status, like geographic background even can have a factor as well, can't it? So yeah, I mean, again, there's an almost endless list of those variations too.
Absolutely. And I love to tell everyone, I mean, something that many people forget, height is diversity. I'm not a very tall person, right? Yeah, I know. I'm in my big chair. But it's so funny because, my brother is 6'2". My sister is five, 5'5" or 5'6". I can't remember. And I'm 5 foot even. Right. And so, I think about going back to that family structure, right? When, as a kid, cereal's up on the tippy top shelf, right? Diversity was an issue, right? Diversity of height, because guess who always got the cereal first?
Yeah.
My brother. And he's a boy, so he ate it all, right?
I'm suddenly feeling like I need to apologize to my siblings.
So I say that in just to say, we think of, like you said, diversity as very specific things, but it encompasses so much. And so in the workplace, we have, there's value and benefit to helping organizations and people in organizations to recognize that all of the talents, all of the skills, all of the abilities, all of the KSAs that people bring to the table speak to different elements of diversity. That, if we put them in the pot, we can do wonderful things with them.
Yeah. And what I love about the height example as well is that you literally have a different perspective on the world to each other. So that's such a great analogy.
Absolutely. Yes. So and so it's not hard. Once we get out of our own way, right? Again, shine that flashlight on ourselves, understand, how we operate and present and move within the environment, then we can, create that intersectionality and connectivity to the value of others.
Absolutely. Well, the big question then, all the leaders and managers in the audience, what can we be doing better to ensure more inclusive workplaces and teams?
That's a fantastic question. I think the first thing is be vulnerable. Be vulnerable to recognize that you don't have to have it all figured out, right? So in my book, I did, as I was preparing to write it, I did several interviews with CEOs, with leaders, and other individuals within organizations. But some of the comments that, um, you know, the CEOs made, the leaders of these organizations made, were, I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing. I don't want to participate in it because I don't want people to look at me badly because I don't really understand it. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid of being labeled as, you know, XYZ if I don't agree with, a different perspective. And it was all based off of the fear of of demonstrating that you don't know the answer, right? You don't have it. So I think vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable and say, hey, I don't get it, right? I don't really know what it means. I don't really know the answer of how to move forward, but I'm willing to work to find out. And letting people see that vulnerability, again, I go back to that builds trust. People trust in you as a leader, and then they see you modeling the behavior to learn, get better, to do something different, and they begin to emulate that, right? So I think that vulnerability is a very critical piece. I think I mentioned earlier, most of our leaders are put in their positions for their knowledge of whatever discipline they have, right? Their ability to focus on finances, their ability to, do whatever it is within the organization that a leader needs to do to make that organization sustainable and successful. Not necessarily a strong suit to show, or a perceived strong suit to show vulnerability, right? You should know the answer. You should know how to do XYZ. We can't know everything. We just can't. It's impossible. We're human. It's okay. So being cognizant of the fact that vulnerability is actually a strength in this space. And I would say in many spaces, right? Because if we go in and think that we just know everything in any discipline, we miss the opportunity to bring in additional elements, facts, pieces of information that can help us to move a little further.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of things that popped into my mind there. I mean, one, I feel like the internet generation really struggle with that, particularly in the context of diversity and inclusion, because they've probably grown up in a world where if you say the wrong thing online, like, you will just get absolutely destroyed, won't you? And some of it can be like genuinely hateful. And so I can understand that it is a fear of doing that in the real world, in inverted commas. And then the second thing is, I think it gets tied up in one of these big leadership myths that comes up a lot. And so much of this myth, I think, is like self-imposed. We, as leaders, we kind of put this on our own shoulders, that we are the ones with the answers. that there's that expectation we have to know the answer, we have to know the behavior that's required, we have to know how to solve whatever the problem is. And when you're in that mindset, it's very difficult to be vulnerable, because you feel like you convince yourself even that if I say I don't know the answer, I'm not the leader anymore. And that's so wrong.
And I love what you said. It's so wrong. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's okay to say, nope, don't know the answer, but I'm going to figure it out. Or, no, I'm not comfortable with, this situation, but I'm working on it. Or, I think that, again, building trust helps us to get so much further together. We can move forward together if we build trust. And I think that, when we don't demonstrate vulnerability, we just miss that opportunity to get that foundational element going and solidified. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I mean, trust is two directional as well. So, by being vulnerable, even by like asking for help with something like, look, I don't understand this. I don't know what the answer is. Can you help me with it? Perhaps you do know the answer. Can you tell me what it is? That's that kind of conversation. You're offering trust as well, which is another really powerful way of building trust. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean,
and to your point, something that I said earlier, now I can see the world from your perspective, right? I can see the world more clearly because now I have another perspective to engage in my thought process, in my, in my movements, etc. So, yeah, it's complex, but it's not difficult. It's not, you know.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because I find a lot of the challenges that leaders face is the other way around. It's simple, but it's difficult.
That's a good point. That is a very good point. Yes, very good point.
Yeah. Well, moving on to leadership more specifically then, what would you say has been the biggest leadership lesson you've learned from your career so far?
Oh, biggest leadership lesson. I would say, and I'm going to credit someone who will probably, who's very modest. Her name is Janet. She was a supervisor that I had, executive leader years ago, and she would always say, "Delphia, don't wait for your ship to sail in, swim out to it." All right, and I think that has stuck with me in the sense that we don't have to sit and wait for for opportunities to make a better workplace, to offer suggestions, to um, find solutions. We don't have to do that, right? We can actually present them, share them. We don't have to wait for someone to come and tap us on the shoulder and say, it's okay to share now. As humans, we like that engagement. So that was probably the biggest advice that I've carried with me throughout my career to move forward in a way that I'm not one to sit and wait for things to happen. I try to make them happen.
It's a good lesson, definitely. I mean, thinking back to what you're talking about earlier about like the introverts as well, that can be something we get stuck in. Yeah, I say we. I'm not convinced where I am on the introvert extrovert scale. I think I go back and forth a lot. Context definitely makes a difference there as well, I'm convinced. But anyway, yeah. So I think it's something as well that I think a lot of earlier career leaders, managers would really benefit from thinking about more, because it is very easy, especially like when you're new to a role, you seek out a comfort zone, and then once you're there, that's it, you're planted for years at least. And and when you're in that comfort zone and you're in that sort of frame of mind, it's very easy to just sort of keep your head down and carry on and not necessarily pursue the next thing until you don't have a choice. So the opposite question, I guess, biggest mistake that you think we make as leaders and as humans?
I can think of two top of head. Biggest mistake is making the assumption that I know the answer, that I have the absolute answer, and that my answer is the best, right? I think we spoke to it earlier. We just don't, it's impossible to know everything, but we get so passionate about, um, what we think we know and the projects we want to move forward and the things that we believe are right. Um, we have to leave space to recognize that even though we've done our due diligence, and I won't say we, I'll speak for myself. I have learned that I must leave space, that even though I've done my due diligence, I have, conducted the research and taken time to understand it from, again, my perspective. Even though those may be absolutes, there still is likely something that I haven't, a rock that I haven't unturned, right? That somebody else has. And so, even when I think that I know, and I'm emphatic that I know the answer and the solution and the path forward, I still must leave room for other input to be a reality in the path. And that's something that's, I learned that the hard way, not necessarily, through, an easy experience. I definitely learned that the hard way.
Yeah, I think I've had a similar experience there. Yeah. It's good to get those sort of rude awakenings sometimes, though, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Like, it changes your perspective again,
Yeah.
in a good way. Once you get over it,
Yeah, exactly. Bounces you back to reality really quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a really important issue, I think, for new leaders as well. I mean, I keep coming back to new leaders. I think any leader at any stage of their career could struggle with this, but I think the ones who are newer to it are perhaps more likely to fall into the trap, let's call it. And it's a variation on the theme, isn't it, of expecting yourself to have all the answers, but then there's also like the assumption of, because I'm the leader, the answer I have is the right one. And that's such an easy trap to fall into. Again, like we've both done it, haven't we? We just talked about that.
Yeah. We can go down that wrong path, and I've been there. I've been on that wrong path.
Yeah, definitely. Same. And I think that there's that truism, isn't it? Or a cliche, I suppose, by now, isn't it? But just because somebody that you're managing, that you're leading, doesn't do the task the way you would have done it, or doesn't have the answer that you would have had, doesn't mean it's the wrong one. And once you can get to that shift in your mindset, I mean, there's almost no stopping you as a leader, I think.
I agree with you. 100% I agree with you.
Yeah. So you've already mentioned one name. I'm curious if it's going to be the same answer to this next question. What would you say has been your best experience of being led?
I think my best experience of being led by anyone has been in situations where I felt that my voice was truly heard, or my perspectives were truly heard. They may not have made the cut in the final decision, or, whatever the product, but they weren't silenced and dismissed in a way that made me feel that I should not elevate future perspectives. So I had many experiences and opportunities. I've worked in a large, I've always worked for large scale organizations, and when a leader, CEO or whomever leans over to you and says, "What do you think?" Or, "What's your perspective?" That's the best for me, because it gives me the opportunity to recognize for myself that my opinion matters. I'm seen in the room. I'm valued for, helping to drive the bus, so to speak. And again, that goes to inclusion, right? Feeling truly included in an environment where my voice matters.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a real knack to doing that well as well, I think, because it's quite easy to ask the question and then just sort of hear them talking, wait for them to stop talking, say thanks, and then it has no bearing on your decision. But the real knack is in actually listening, making that person feel as though you're listening and that they're being heard, and that what they are saying is at least factoring into your decision making, even if the decision doesn't end up aligning with what they've said. Because sometimes it won't, because there'll be maybe 2,000 other people you've asked the question to as well. That is really difficult. Again, it's one of these simple but not easy parts of leadership, I think, because on paper it's dead simple, isn't it? But it's very difficult in practice. It's the time travel question. Always get really interesting answers to this one. So if you could go back in time, right back to the start of your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
If I could go back eons ago to the start of my career, okay. What would I think the biggest piece of advice I would offer is, and I say this a lot to my team, my current team, and living your power, right? We all possess uh, wonderful skills and attributes that some of them are even unknown by ourselves, from our personal perspectives. Other people tell us about it. Other people see it, but we don't necessarily recognize it. So my biggest piece would be find comfort in living in your power, right? Don't question and second guess yourself when you're out to do good work. What's meant for you is not going to miss you. So it's important to get comfortable in that space. I have a daughter who is she just graduated from college, just got her I say real job with air quotes, her first career position in her field. And I tell her all the time, live in your power, find comfort, find that space to, okay, be vulnerable. You don't know everything, right? You're just starting in the workforce. Don't go in there thinking that you know everything, but recognize that you are there because you have a certain power to bring to the table. And no one, I didn't get that advice when I first started my career. I had to figure out that it was important to do as time went on.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know about you, there's that self-awareness piece to that as well. And just like at a basic level, it's like knowing what you're good at and making sure that that's valued. I don't know about you, but the older I get, the easier I find that. So it's part why this is slightly a trick question, to be honest, because like, if I had the opportunity to go back and give that advice to my younger self, I know I wouldn't have been able to do it. I mean, like, so your example, when people say, "Oh, they tell you you're good at something that you didn't realize," I just didn't believe them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's like, oh, really, me? Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
Yeah. When you're saying that for some other reason, you want something. I don't know, you want me to do something for you
yeah.
or
Like, what
something.
do you really want? Yeah,
Yeah, I don't trust this. Yeah.
yes, I understand. I'm right there with you. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh well. At least we're getting better at it.
absolutely. We get better with time, for sure.
Well, I've only got one question left for you. No pressure, though. This is my favourite question.
Leadership Heroes.
So if you could pick one person, but it could be any person you could think of, could be alive or dead, past or present, real or even fictitious, if you like, but it's got to be someone who, in your opinion, perfectly embodies leadership. Who would that be for you and why?
That is a hard question.
I know, right?
Yes, because I draw, I see like kind of a collage of so many people right now that I would love to acknowledge. Who would be my best leadership person? I would say, um, oh my golly, um, I'm going to say my mom, right? And now here's the ironic thing: she's never worked in the corporate world. She didn't go to college. She's my mom, right? And her leadership, well, sometimes I, didn't agree with it, especially as a teenager, but her qualities were all about making sure that there was fairness in the environment. She was that mom who was at all of the activities, all of the games. She brought the community together. She, saw when people were in need. She would figure out what she could do to help and support, even if she didn't really know them. Um, that's a leader, recognizing how can I contribute to make the world a better place. And she took time to do that, in a way that did not ostracize anyone. She would always focus on how does everyone, um, thrive in any environment that she's in. So I know that might seem like a cop-out answer, but I think that's where I would go with that.
No, not at all. You might be surprised how often people choose a parent, actually, or a family member. I'm surprised at how often it happens, actually. But yeah, I think there's probably a lesson in there somewhere, isn't there, about, what leadership means and how we define it. And I think a lovely one from your answer there is about making the world a better place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even like a small part of the world, like the team you're leading, your family, your community. So yeah, it goes back to what we were saying much earlier, doesn't it, about defining the terms. Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's also an interesting extra point I make. So the theme of International Leadership Week this year is legacy. So anyone who picks a parent to answer this question is almost implicitly acknowledging that leader has created a legacy, haven't they? Because you're here, you're doing all these good things in the world as well. And so, yeah, bit of a nod there to International Leadership Week.
I love it.
Well, Delphia, it's been lovely talking to you today. I've learned a lot as well. I'm sure all of the audience have learned loads and have really enjoyed this conversation. And if any of them would like to learn more about you, could you point us to a website or social links or all of the above?
Sure. Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Delphia Howze in the world, right? It's not a very common name, but Delphia Howze, on LinkedIn. You can also find me on my website, which is D as in David, Howze, Howze solutions.com, dhowsesolutions.com. And, it's, you can also find my book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of the book outlets, and also through my website. I will say that, if you send me a message through my webpage, I can offer a select group of individuals, select few, a free audiobook, which was just released, of Including You, Leading Inclusion from Where You Are. So send messages and I'll connect with you.
Lovely. Well, that's a great offer there as well. Excellent. I'm sure plenty of people will take you up on that. Yeah. Well, thank you again so much for your time. It's been great having you on the show, and have a great rest of your day.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Delphia, thank you again so much for that conversation. Some real eye-opening moments there, I think, hopefully for the listeners and viewers as well. And to the listener or viewer, if you would like to learn more about Delphia, perhaps get a copy of her book, do visit her website and her social links. You'll find those down in the show notes, as always. And if you found this podcast, then I do hope it's because you are new to leadership, in whatever form that might take, or perhaps new to business, either or. Perhaps you're a first-time founder, or you're a new solopreneur, a new manager in a bigger company, and you're interested in knowing more about leadership, how to lead well, what leading with integrity is really about, and you're looking for support or community. If any of that sounds familiar, then please do pay a visit to www.leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. There's plenty to read on that website. You'll also see a green button asking you to come and join the community. Click on that and you'll find a little intro video and more information about the Integrity Leaders community. So do come and visit us at Integrity Leaders. It's the online first leadership community for new leaders, for first-time founders, fledgling managers, isolated solopreneurs, people who want to be more effective, people-first leaders. And if you're a fan of science fiction and fantasy as well, and you don't take yourself too seriously, then you will definitely fit right in. So come and join our virtual starship today and start getting to know your crewmates and colleagues on the grand voyage into the leadership stars. Thank you again so much for listening and for supporting the podcast and the work that Leading with Integrity is doing. That's all I have for you today. I'll be back next week with my next guest, Chris Wilson, and we'll be talking about leadership and service, among other things. Hope you'll be there with us, and until then, stay safe and as always, be a leader, not a boss.